There are a lot of young girls that haven't developed the resilience yet. And I thought, oh, hell
no. This poem is about joy. It's not about water remnants, evaporation, or sand, or thirst, or dry fruit, or hinges, or being hung today. A Black woman could smoke a cigarette, could laugh. This poem is about joy.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me today. I'm super excited to chat with you all about this incredible film, Black Girls. My name is Derek, and I'm a manager and storyteller at Southwest Airlines, and also served as a member of the selection committee for BrandStorytelling 2025. I have to tell you, of all the pieces of work that I had the pleasure of screening, this by far was one of my all-time favorites. As I watched it, I saw my mother, I saw my niece, I saw my best friend, I saw a multitude of people who look like me and who have a variety of different experiences, but their stories were told in a way that exhibited so much care and so much attention to their full selves, which we don't seldom get to see on screen. So I really just want to say congratulations on being selected for this year, and congratulations on the story that you've told. So for the next 30 minutes or so, we're going to have a conversation about the film, how it came to be, your involvement with it, the creative process, and all of the nitty-gritty that people would want to know more about. So with that being said, I'd have you guys just kind of start from the beginning. And the first question I'll ask is, why did you all as brands choose to support this story? So perhaps, Crystal, we can start with you.
Great. Well, hello. Good afternoon. I'm so honored to be part of this discussion with B. Monét or B, Jon-Thomas, as well as JT. I call him JT. Chad, so good to see you again. And Derek, really great to meet you. In terms of my introduction, I'm here at P&G, as you just said, and I actually am in our P&G studio space, but I also support programs and initiatives we have called Widen the Screen, as well as Queen Collective, which we might get a little bit into that. There's a connection there a little bit later. But to go to your question in terms of why do brands support films, did you say, or content such as this? It stems from a couple of things or reasons. At P&G, we really take pride in innovation, in the products that we innovate to make sure that we are meeting and serving the needs of all the consumers that we do serve out there. But that also goes to how do we reach them? And when I say reach them, it's that we want to be able to reach them in what we call relevant, resonant, and authentic ways. And some of the most relevant and resonant ways to do that is through stories, is through telling stories that are authentic and that people can connect to. And that's really important, because when we do that, that helps to also demonstrate to the different audiences that we're trying to reach or speak to that we probably, one, understand you, two, we see you, we hear you. And that's really important to make sure it's reflected in the content in the story that is there. I would also say around or being part of that content or being able to help produce content that is relevant and resonant, as I said, it will go out to different audiences that, one, hopefully we already have a rapport, relationship with. If not, maybe that might be their first interaction with us through new content, but also it allows our brands to surround that content. And so it then brings our brands forward to them again in a way that could be relevant and resonant, and provide a connection, provide hopefully a level of authenticity that is really important, and honestly that people want to see these days.
I love that. And you certainly can feel that come out in the film. So kudos to you all for being a part of it. What would you say to that, Chad? Why specifically did your brand decide to be a part of this story?
Yeah, thanks, Derek. So I'm Chad Mulder, and I lead the brand and communications team at a company called Juniper Networks. We're a large technology company And we make hardware and software and artificial intelligence for all sorts of networks that businesses use, universities use, and so forth. Crystal, you use the word connection, and I think while our businesses, P&G and Juniper, are very different, yours is a consumer brand company, ours is a B2B technology company. I think there's common ground in our respect for and desire to facilitate meaningful connections. And it turns out, in fact, Derek, that our mission statement is make every connection count. Our company is making connections, from facility to facility across big geographical spaces, but also ultimately person to person. And so just thinking about what is connection, right? And what's the basis of connection, that's meaningful conversations. And so just at a base level, that's what we're interested in facilitating in order to truly make every connection count and fulfill our mission in that way. So when we looked out in the world and we saw first Black boys and then ultimately Black girls, man, we recognized pretty early that's a conversation that will help make every connection count in that way. The other way that we kind of enter into this project is through STEM. Our industry is reliant on STEM, short term and long term, right? But STEM, particularly in the U.S., Derek, is not a very diverse place historically. And so this is really an effort for us to say, like, hey, gosh, innovation and technology innovation is only as good as the number of people and the kinds of people that we're inviting into that. And so we really want to make those kind of investments in our company and in our people to say, like, again, these are the kind of conversations we want to make in order to invest in STEM and invest in the right conversations.
That's incredible. Switching gears just a little bit, JT, I'm going to come to you next. So, of course, Never Whisper Justice has had other films before that touch on a variety of different subjects, similar into the vein of Black girls. I know Black Boys, of course, is one film that you all have done that's been received very well and very popular. So I'm just curious, why are you all looking to go even further into conversations like this in a way that can resonate and kind of, to Chad's point, be able to make those connections count?
Yeah, so, when it came to the progression from, I would say our work with Black boys and going into Black girls, a really something that we noticed within the process of that 3-year period, and a little bit about me. So, CEO of Never Whisper Justice, co-founder as well, specialized mostly in production, impact, and strategy. And, what we really got to learn over Black boys was there was this 3-year labor of love, around how are we centering the story around, young Black men in America at the intersection of sports, mass incarceration, education. But through that, we also were able to amass just such an understanding of the importance of Black women, even in those stories and even in those scenarios. And also not only their contribution to the lives of these Black men, but also the contributions to the institutions in which we, found our livelihoods on, and so in the ways in which we support our communities. And so we did feel like, although Black Boys was very resonant and it came out and, was championed in a phenomenal way, we would be remiss if we didn't add Black girls to a conversation in a way that centers them and centers their experiences in that same manner. And through B. Monét's phenomenal leadership and direction, I feel like we were able to also create a new avenue in which to, I would say, visually even construct that narrative, and then in a way that really truly transformed our company and our brand as well.
That's incredible. I love that. Well, you certainly have done that, which is exciting, and a nice segue into B. Monet. And your direction was absolutely flawless, just in terms of the way the film was shot and the color story and the way that you were able to really show the humanity of these 6 women and beyond was really cool. If I'm not mistaken, I read an interview that you did promoting the film, and you specifically talked about wanting to show a wide variety of women and their experiences, because we're not a monolith. Black women, Black people are not a monolith. And I'm curious, how did you approach this story, and how were you successful at pulling out those narratives in a way that did showcase the individuality and the uniqueness of each of those women while still having a common thread throughout?
Thank you so much also for your kind words. I'm just happy that anyone sees my work or this film. So just thank you so much for that. Yeah, I mean, telling the story of Black girls, I think, is just so instrumental in who I am as a person. I think I've always kind of just been obsessed with who we are in our interior worlds, whether it be, sitting down and getting my hair braided, and my mom or my grandmother telling me stories, and that oral feeling, right? Or the texture of someone in your scalp. The things that Black women have told me when we kiki and we're partying and we're going out, and all these things kind of are reminiscent in terms of just like what makes me happy about the existence of Black women. And so I took, some of my own personal tributes, right? And then wanted to go out and find other women who I feel like are just incredible in their own right. And so we were always looking for women who could be transparent and vulnerable and have a level of access and openness to them. And so it was a very long, grueling process of identifying who could be those voices, because, if I had my druthers, there'd be probably like four Black girls if there, if we could, because we interviewed over 20 people in different cities and things like that. And so we had to be really decisive in terms of like, well, what are we actually trying to say? And what are the themes that some of these women bring that maybe folks haven't seen? Like folks haven't necessarily seen an athlete like an Allison Felix go through such a horrific thing like that. We've seen folks like Beyonce, who's not an athlete, but right, like amazing in her own right. But Serena Williams has, talked about, her birthing experience. And so it was really important that we show like, yes, and if that makes sense, like this person may present a certain way, but there's more than what meets the eye. And so hopefully you get that from the slice of life perspective, from what you're seeing from the film.
Well, and I'd have to agree, it was impactful, at least for me, being able to open the film with Allison Felix, right? And just as a fan of the Olympics and Allison's just in general, I had read her story, but there was so much of her story that I didn't know until I watched this film. And to see how disproportionately Black women are affected in terms of immortality related to, or excuse me, mortality rather related to childbirth is really disheartening. So walk me through, why you chose to open the film in such a strong way, um, and kind of hit on some of those topics that maybe other people are just not aware of.
Yeah. JT, do you want to take that?
Oh, you know what? B and I spent a lot of time deciding how to open, so it was easily a very collective effort, and I do think that we similar to what B was saying already when it comes to um really leaning into what it means to subvert expectations of like what the Black woman experience is. And I think for Allison in particular, for those who, understand her narrative superficially, and they see someone who's an Olympian, who's in great health, who, has a wonderful family, and then ultimately, when it came to her relationship with the sponsor, there was an impediment to that upon becoming pregnant, and then also her, relationship to her birthing experience, and having preeclampsia, and ultimately these things that, although she seems very insulated from, ultimately came right to her doorstep, in doing something that's one of the, most beautiful acts of life, right? And so I do think that we wanted to really be able to kind of take this narrative, and take this expectation, as I said, subvert it, and really provide a deeper level of insight as, okay, this can happen to like any Black woman, right? Irrespective of class, irrespective of shade, and I think that that is something that we felt like also kind of opened up the, I would say, structure for what advocacy can look like, right? Oftentimes, our our deepest levels of advocacy come from our deepest pains, our deepest hurts. And so for her to be able to not only, I would say, create an advocacy platform with Kamala Harris and, ultimately be able to kind of build a network around providing maternal protections and supports, she was also able to do the thing that she loved and be able to, win and excel at it, right? And also having this really non-compromising, vision, is something that I think a lot of Black women do have and contribute to our national story, our national makeup and collective story. And so I think that the way in which she was able to embody that really set the stage and set the tone for how it is we wanted to also open up the rest of the stories coming after hers as well.
That's incredible. I love that. So one of the things that I think audiences might wonder is why tell this story in a feature-length format versus taking each 6 individual woman's story and telling them more episodically. So walk me through the process and if there ever was a conversation throughout production where you said, hey, maybe we need to spend a bit more time on each woman's story and break it up episodically, or you already knew from the beginning this needs to be feature length.
That's definitely a B question.
Come on, B, what you got?
No, I never really wanted to do episodic. For me, I just feel like I think there's something really beautiful about features and like, maybe selfishly, I'm just like, oh my God, no, episodic is great in its own right, but I think that there's something about a body of work being timeless and 20 years from now, I hope people are still watching Black Girls, right? I don't know if they would necessarily watch Black Girls if it was, I don't know, episodic. Maybe they would. I don't know. But yeah, it's hard because there's so many voices also that aren't in the film. And so, with having a great team, we were able to brainstorm and figure out, okay, which are the voices that we need to identify that are maybe the stronger voices, out of the batch. But that was a very grueling process within itself too, because there were so many people who, you know, I don't know if their story will ever be out there. I hope, that's always my hope. I feel like I get very attached to my subjects. And so it's like hard to be like, oh my God, your story was also so amazing, but it can't be in here. So it's such a dance, I know JT can speak more to that too, in terms of just like, themes that he also was like, okay, maybe this one, not that one. Like I know people love Vanessa's story, and that was a story that I was very nervous about, just given the things that you see and you don't see that are, around her story, especially around suicide, also around like, gun violence a bit. She has a lot of trauma in her story, so we just wanted to handle that delicately, especially given how she presents. I didn't want her to, you know, be another stereotype or something like that, because I think sometimes, unfortunately, this world has a way of bullying and putting on what they feel like darker skinned bodies should be. And so JT can definitely walk you through like her chapter was really, I wouldn't say a headache, but it was definitely like a labor of love in the best way, because I love that so many people love her chapter, but I was very, very nervous about hers.
Yeah, I think I mean be just kind of seconding what you're saying and also going into we talked specifically about both of our loves for features at one point. I remember we were locked in my office for days on end trying to figure out how to assemble everything and living in post world. And so I do think that there's something beautiful to being able to experience the film, all at once in one sitting. And so I do feel like being able to see the juxtapositions of personal stories and narratives in real time is something really special. And ultimately, when we are talking about just Black women being and Black women and girls being multitudes, and making out being so different in expression and so different in how they present and love joy and show joy and so on and so forth. We also wanted to create almost like this palette, you know what I mean, or like an understanding of, oh, this can be like working, you can find inspiration in a specific way in any of these stories, and also you can find connection, right, with any of these stories. And I do think that being able to experience that kind of once again in real time, it almost builds a different relationship with the material, and then it also allowed us to play once again, playing with convention, playing to juxtaposition. You know, we have Allison Felix, who is a lighter skinned Black woman, right? But then we have Vanessa right after, right? Who is a dark skinned Black woman who's neurodivergent, right? I also think that it was this being able to show those transitions, but there's still this care, there's still this force, there's still these similarities, was something we really wanted to find a balance in. And the last thing I'll mention is, in working with individuals who, specifically Black people, Black community, Black stories, and individuals who might be justice impacted or trauma impacted, I do feel like there is this fine line of how do you construct a narrative with care, right? How do you focus on like you have to really, what is the orienting principle actually, is what one of our story producers, Sabrina Schmidt-Gordon, would say, and really constructing the world around that orienting principle. And I think that one thing that we wanted to make sure is that we took an asset framed approach with all the stories. So even though we are expressing themes that might be traumatic or might be sensitive, we made sure to I would say really resolve those in a place that allowed the individual speaking to be framed with autonomy, right? And strength within the way in which they're presenting their story. And I feel like that's something that doesn't always happen in today's kind of media. And I think there's more language around it now, and there's many films that are kind of interrogating that. But I also think that when it came to be in the editorial team, that's something that we spend a lot of time talking about and discussing. And I feel like we were able to do a pretty good job about it.
You know, JT, it's interesting to hear the intentionality that you all had with really figuring out, like you say, what is that connective tissue among all of those stories. I'll tell you just a little bit behind the curtain. When the other members of the selection committee and I had an opportunity a few weeks ago to discuss all of the films, really, one of the things that rose to the top was this idea of being able to center these stories in joy. A lot of the stories are centered in joy. It doesn't mean that the subjects haven't experienced trauma or other issues in their lives that maybe are the antithesis of joy, but being able to see that, yeah, hey, we can tell a Black story without it being rooted solely in pain and trauma. That can be a part of the experience, but it's not the whole person. So I'm curious, how did you all balance really showcasing what the women have been through, but also still ensuring that their joy was front and center? And before you answer, I got to just give a huge plug for Vanessa. I smiled the entire time she was on camera. And I'm so excited that you all included her in this because her story needed to be told. And it really pulled at something within inside me that was like, hey, we need more stories like this. And why aren't we seeing people who are like Vanessa and who are just as incredible as she is?
No, thank you so much for saying that. I feel like with Vanessa, I feel like a lot of people feel seen. I'm not saying that they don't in the other ones, but I feel like that's the root of what I feel like I'm hearing from folks, that they feel that they've gone through bullying of some sort, right? Or harassment or um, unaliving themselves or suicidal thoughts, and trying to come to a place where you accept yourself. And I think, joy was always something that was just very important to me as a person, but especially as a Black filmmaker. I don't want us to also just sit in pain. I feel like, yes, that is a part of many of us, our existence as people, historically, but I don't want us to just live in the gruesomeness of pain. And I think also Black excellence can look like joy, and it can look like these women going through, adversity, but not letting the adversities that they've gone through or experienced be the only determining factor of who they truly are. And I remember in our LA screening, a friend of mine being like, oh my God, I've never seen six women and girls be so whole. And I thought that that was such a beautiful takeaway because to JT's point about earlier, I think folks need to know that these are different people who show up, and they show up differently, and that joy can be your resting place no matter how you orient yourself in the world. And so, yeah, joy is so big to me as a principal, and especially for Black women. Oh my God, we need more of it because the world is actively always trying to diminish us and take away our joy. So I hope Black girls can be something that lives on past us, and people can say, oh man, 50 years ago, those Black girls were doing it. They were finding a way to be joyous despite the things that they've gone through. So yeah. And thank you so much for what you said about Vanessa. She's a fan favorite, truly. She's incredible.
Yeah, she really is. She really is. And you need to put that on the t-shirt. Joy can be your resting place. So
Sure. Look, maybe that's a shirt.
I'm gonna adopt that because honestly, we definitely need more of that.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And Derek, if you don't mind, if I just jump in here, because
Hmm.
one of the things I just want to say why it's so important, and I was so excited when B was identified and tapped to be the director of this film, is because I had the pleasure of working with her on a different project, but we have I would call it's an initiative, but I would also call it a mission called Widen the Screen. And what Widen the Screen is really all about is we know it's important who's behind the camera because that informs or the stories you see in front of the camera. And the reason that's important, or I just kind of want to build on to what B is saying, is because a big part of that is just as we've been saying here, a lot of stories that are told, especially um, simply about Black people, often seem to be these extremes, right? Like extreme trauma or this extreme, what I kind of call superstardom, where quite honestly, most of us live in the middle. We're here in the middle, living these beautiful lives, such as Vanessa's, but you don't necessarily see those stories. And so being able to widen the screen really helps to bring a variety of life experiences, such as being able to see joy that comes to life, being able to see the variety of the women that were highlighted in Black Girls, which again is so important because we are not a monolith. But not only are we not a monolith, we're not all living in the space of, you know, trauma or extreme superstardom, but literally in the middle, like the rest of everyone else, right? But our experiences may look different, but or a lot might be the same. But unless people see these stories to know and understand that, that can be missed, right? So again, it's just so wonderful that being able to have a B Monet behind the camera and her vision, as well as with JT, but to be able to bring us that that vast, I would say, spectrum of amazing, beautiful stories. And B said it again. It's the and we saw all the holistic nature of someone's experience, which again made this so beautiful, but also I think could help, as Chad was saying, either someone else connect or again really help others see, hey, I'm not out here alone. Like there are other folks that have similar or same experiences and that you could learn, which is very important as well.
Yeah, that feeling seen part I think is very important. And we even heard in the film from Marley who talked about how she didn't see herself or other people who looked like her represented in the books. And that sparked this huge movement that is still going on today. So the amount of impact that you can have just when you, as you say, widen the screen and give people those opportunities to be in spaces and places that maybe they don't normally get to be in, the impact you can have is absolutely incredible.
Mhm.
So kind of thinking more on the brand side of things, Crystal. So I think you opened the door up to a really great area of the conversation now. And Chad, you as well, would love to hear from you. So just understanding that oftentimes there are challenges to bring stories like this to life, right? Of course, in the news, we're seeing every single day, we're seeing a lot of programs such as diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging get cut or, kind of be shoehorned into the background, and people have a variety of different feelings about that, both inside and outside of organizations. So I'm curious, what obstacles, if any, did you all face when trying to bring this story to life? And what advice would you give other brands who are wanting to continue this type of work, but maybe are coming up against opposition?
Would you like me to start, or Chad, would you like to go?
Go ahead. I'm happy to jump in, but go ahead first, Crystal.
Okay. So what I would say, Derek, is times have evolved, I think, since we started this film. I would say when we started this film and when it was released, while there may have been some challenges or, potential barriers, I would say that, they may not have been to the extent of what we may be facing as we move forward. So I think one is understanding the time frame you're in, the evolution of what's happening. However, what I would say is, at least for us, in here at P&G, again, we always have, call it our audience or the consumers at the forefront. And for us, it's about being able to serve them uniquely, in terms of what their needs may be. So be it either from a product standpoint, and again, providing superiority, so superior products, but also that goes into superior communication, right? And we do that for all of our consumer and for each unique consumer group. Because again, for us, it's making sure that we're able to, bring them those products and or to communicate in a way that, again, is relevant and resonant. So for us, we always keep the consumer and the audience we're trying to reach at the center, then we tend to identify that the barrier may not be as high, as it can seem, because at the end of the day, it's about serving all in each consumer group in a way that is relevant in what they need. So
Chad?
that's how we look at it.
Yeah, I love that. Chad, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm glad that you started that conversation, Crystal, because I think we approach this differently, right? And I said at the onset that our businesses are different. The way that we sort of think about, and I guess even activate the film, is different. And let me give just a smidge of background, right? So where P&G has, I'm probably oversimplifying your business, Crystal, forgive me, but like a single buyer in most instances, our or a family unit who's making a purchase. Our business is different, right? We've got, I don't know, a dozen people involved in a purchase decision, and it's tens of millions of dollars, and it's a really long sales cycle, and so it's a different business. So we approach it differently, therefore, and where we've seen, so we use it less in terms of driving our business, and landing with our ultimate sort of purchase decision maker, and more about how do we think of our employer brand. I mentioned before that technology, of course, is fueled by innovation. Innovation is fueled by people. Like, that's it. So we win and lose on the basis of our people, and the competition for really talented people in our space is fierce. And so where we've landed on this, Derek, is to say, hey, we want to be an employer of choice. So what does it mean to be an employer of choice in our space? I think in large part, it's about building sort of an authentic, environment for people. And that means, yes, people can show up and be their true selves and bring both conventional and wacky ideas to the table, because you don't get great ideas without both, but also authentic conversations, which we've already touched on, right? And driving that. So when we activate our film, there's in large doses, it's internal, it's focused on our employees, thinking about, gosh, what does it look like for those conversations to drive satisfaction, to drive a sense of belonging internally, to drive a sense of intellectual engagement in topics that are relevant now, not just in the four walls of our company, but in the lives that we all carry on in and outside of the walls. So your question was about challenge, Derek. I guess with that sort of as background, one of the challenges, frankly, is just like, how do we measure that? And we've had to think about in a business like ours, that's everything is measured very quantitatively. What I just talked about is not as easy to measure quantitatively. So I think we've struggled with some metrics, but we're getting there over time. And certainly as people sort of leadership totally buys into the vision, we've been able to sort of make up for or understand metrics along the way. But that's not, there's no precedent for that.
I think specifically within our space that we all occupy, right? That is something that we struggle with, is really trying to measure not only the impact, but we hear all the time the ROI, the ROI, the ROI, and not to make everything about dollars and cents, but when it comes to a business, obviously that is a huge component of it. And so many marketers and brand storytellers are struggling to have those conversations to say, hey, we understand we might not be able to give you a dollar amount today, but here's the impact it could have over brand affinity or consideration or whatever metric it is that you're measuring. So I don't think you all are alone in that. So I don't know if that makes you feel better or worse, but it is something that I believe all of us as brand marketers and storytellers are trying to figure out and focus in on as well.
Well, we actually, I kind of want to lean a little bit into the different use cases for, how Crystal and P&G used the film and how Chad did, with Juniper, because one thing. So Crystal, it was a phenomenal champion, by the way. So Crystal really works within scene. Not to put your business out there, Crystal, but I'm just going to give a chart so I can show just like how much labor you put into this. So Crystal is, predominantly above brand, but we really got introductions to, Always, to Pantene, to My Black is Beautiful, and we got to learn what it is that they needed from a marketing perspective as well. And so, in addition to, yes, we created a film together, we also created campaigns that actually spoke to the audiences multiculturally that they were wanting to nurture. And so each of these campaigns had, we called them purpose-driven spots, where they had these stories that really covered the brand's needs, talked about incorporated either product or ethos or ambition initiatives is what P&G has specifically, but then referenced the film as well. And so we did create kind of a more nuanced content package that has the ability to both kind of meet that end user on the consumer side goal, but then also kind of build the affinity piece as well. But to Chad's point, I think as an organization that's predominantly B2B, we really saw that culture infusion as a huge success metric. And so, Chad, kind of in contrast to the brand content piece, we did more internal screenings, we did more surveys, especially when you look at by 2050, the United States is going to be predominantly multicultural, right? So when you said that thing about employer choice, Chad, it's like, really, how are you accounting for that now so that you're not at a deficit relative to other competition in the future? And so I do think that we were able to get a lot of qualitative within the Juniper side and a fair amount of quantitative within the P&G side. So just wanted to put that generally out there too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like marrying the art and the science.
It definitely is. And again, what I think is so remarkable about this is that you were able to bring on JT, two totally different types of business models and companies, right? Which I love that, just because, again, it can give people license to think what's possible, right? Because it may not have to look all the same, and it most likely won't look all the same. So I think that's also kind of a key takeaway I hope people have from this discussion, having, Chad from a place that's B2B and us here at P&G a little bit closer to the consumer. I will say, though, where we are focused and grounded in terms of that business connection and growing with our business with consumers, employees do see it as well, and it becomes a big draw. And so, to your point, we also are really always looking for the broadest pool of talent also, because, again, you need that to be able to help, make sure you're driving, again, those very unique insights. But it then becomes, and you start to find out, it becomes a source of employee pride, and employee connection, and employees point to the programs, they point to the projects, they tell their families about it. So it also, enables and helps that as well. So that is a connection we do have, Chad,
Totally.
where it does help to drive that affinity from an employee standpoint, which is really exciting. It is
It is fun.
difficult to measure, but you do see it and you hear the buzz in the hallways. So I also would
Yep.
not diminish that as well
No, and the buzz
as a
is
key
super,
metric.
I agree with you totally. And the employee pride thing is super fun and it's real.
Yes.
And let me just say this too, like none of this would work if the film wasn't great, right?
Absolutely.
Like,
That part.
and great on so many levels, right?
Right.
Poignant, great narrative, great production. Like, and I think you started by saying that, Derek, but I think it's worth bringing up again. Everything that Crystal and I are talking about as folks who think about brand and business, man, that's the fuel behind all this.
Absolutely.
100%. Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself.
Yep.
So I honestly could talk to you all day about this film and about why you did it, your thought process. Monét, I want to just like go super deep with you on the creative, but we are nearing the end of our time. So before my last question, I have one more. Of course, distribution is something very, very important whenever making content of this type, right? So I'm curious, what was the distribution strategy for Black Girls? And ultimately, what were you hoping to achieve with that? And I don't know, JT, this might be for you, but open to anyone who'd like to jump in.
Yeah, so there's a couple fold. So for the film itself, we did have a long-standing relationship with Comcast, NBC Universal, and Peacock, and they distributed our first film. And so there was always that thought process of, okay, this is a warm place. They know us. This is somewhere we can go. So that was something that they had been made aware very early on in the process, and there were periodic check-ins, and so we really had that level of understanding. And then there also was this actually the second time that we had brand integration as well, and so Black Boys had Old Spice initially. They had a 10-year commitment to increasing graduation rates, and then Chad and Juniper hopped on very early with Black Boys as well. So ultimately, there were already some metrics for success that we were kind of ironing out and understanding, and there was also some kind of like subsidized advertising support in which the studio felt too. So I think that was a very beautiful kind of baseline that we were able to work from. And then when it came to the ways in which the brands identify with distribution, we did create those branded content spots or those purpose-driven campaigns that they were ultimately able to post within the context of their social channels. We did the BET Awards, I believe, with My Black is Beautiful was great. So we had a broadcast opportunity. Shout out to Eric Austin. He really facilitated that. And it really, I would say that it ultimately was able to promote the relationship with the film in a much broader way that spoke to the brand needs. And I have someone who's cutting grass in my backyard, so I'm going to mute. It's very off.
No problem at all. That was great. That was fantastic. Okay. Crystal, did you have something to add as well?
No, I just would say too, also, as we identify and look for partners, and again, JT was amazing in terms of, identifying a home, right? I mean, I think the biggest thing we all wish for at the end of the day is to make sure that everybody gets to see this, right? Like we want everyone to see the film because, as B said, we all become very attached. We know the stories, and as Chad said, are done beautifully, told beautifully, and this work has to be seen. So that last like mile of making sure you have a distribution partner, and the distributor is just so critical, right? Just again, to be able to make sure everyone gets to see this and have as many eyeballs on it. But again, from our brand perspective, be it either what we kind of call those story stretches or those vignettes that can bring the brand, or that we can surround that content with, and that distributor brings again all of that additional value that we're all looking for and that our brands are looking for. So it's just such an important, like I said, last mile of the race that it's just so important. And JT did a masterful job, and Never Whisper Justice did a masterful job there with bringing that through so everybody can see it.
I love
See
that.
B's beautiful work.
Yes, 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 yes. And on that note, B, I mean, honestly, I could just literally talk to you all day, just about the creative direction that you took, but even just the care and attention to ensuring that the skin tones were honored appropriately and shown appropriately, something that honestly is overlooked so many times in film. So again, just kudos, kudos, kudos. So last question for you all. What do you hope people will take away from seeing this film?
Crystal, do you want to start?
I'll go.
Come
Y'all
on,
made me
Crystal.
start the conversation. Look,
Got
that's
great
so
answers.
hard.
Yeah, come on, bring us home.
Oh, okay. Well, for me, I would say, even if you don't present as a Black woman, I would really appreciate you um, leaning into this experience and learning about these 6 different individuals that are not the same, but have beautiful stories to tell. And if you happen to have a Black woman in your life or a Black girl in your world, please listen more than you talk. Sometimes Black women and girls don't always have safe spaces where we can be ourselves and we can really just be. And I think what we were trying to accomplish with this film is showing the interior worlds of women who have never been documented in this way. And so, again, if you have the opportunity to have a Black woman or girl in your life, please show them this film. It's on different platforms. It's on Xfinity, Black Experience. It's on Peacock, Zumo, Flex, lots of places. Um, but also, we all have different privileges, and I would really appreciate if, you're in a place of being open to your privilege, that you would speak in those moments where something is happening to a Black woman or a girl and it makes you feel uncomfortable or there's some unease there. Use your privilege. You know what I mean? These are the times when we definitely have always needed folks to be advocates for us. And I'm not sure what the future exactly looks like, but I'm holding on to joy. And I hope that you will too. Despite the craziness happening and ensuing constantly, for me, I want artists to hold on to joy, seriously, because I think a lot of people are feeling so disenchanted, so heartbroken, so devastated by the results of the election, and they're not able to see that they still have gifts, God-given gifts and abilities that they've been granted as a human being. And if you are a person of color, you have historically gone through things that have been very unimaginable. So this is not a time to fold. This is still a time to stand up and to be proud of who you are. And I just want that to really be something that we hold on to in this time of unrest, that joy can still be a landing place. So that's me.
Beautiful,
Yep.
beautiful.
Yep.
Crystal?
Okay. Um, you know, what I hope people take away from the film is we had 6 beautiful chapters in this film. We talked about the difference between episodic versus a full length, but I kind of call them chapters because that's how they presented themselves to me. But what I would say is each of the subject matter areas within there, like even as a Black woman, I learned a lot, right? And saw some things differently. So my hope or the takeaway is that as people look at this, to really internalize each of these chapters and the subject matter within those and be curious and go and learn more. Um, because there's still so much, right, to unpack from all of them, which B was saying, like, gosh, we had to figure out how to really get all of this into these beautiful stories. But there's so much more behind, I think, each of them. And so I feel like these are definitely a spark that can kind of ignite this larger fire, I'm hoping, of curiosity, but also understanding, and most importantly, empathy. which would be really important. And again, does give all of us that opportunity to, like I said, learn more, to think differently, and then also to be able to advocate for one another.
So hold on to joy, listen more, have that empathy. Honestly, really, really great takeaways for this film. Chad, I'll come to you next, and then JT will have you close us out.
Yeah, thanks, Derek. I think for the viewer, listen, B and Crystal covered it beautifully. So I don't have anything to add there. What I will add, Derek, is I think listen for the industry. I think we need to make more films like this. I think that's a clear takeaway. That's one of my hopes. And then I would say for brands, I hope this is a little bit of a case study that suggests, hey, brands can think pretty expansively about about their involvement in projects like this. And I think historically, we as brand folks looked for kind of very clear, obvious connections between projects and our brands. And I think in both of these, like I said, kind of mini cases, we did less than obvious things. And I think I hope that's something that we can build on, and maybe other people can learn from too.
I second and third what everyone is saying, and I'll start by kind of centering the industry as a whole, and then I'll go into the individual. I love what Chad said about there were a lot of novel steps taken to have this film exist. Whether Crystal sent me with so many meetings and was incredibly. So I just want to say, I need to reinforce that. But also just this element of as a filmmaker, I do think that we are in this world where the world of advertising is the economic medium for most information in society today, and I think that that goes for film as well. And so I also think that we really had to think comprehensively around how are we creating a economic precedent for meaningful content, right? And meaningful Black content and meaningful stories. And I feel like through this, team of amazing individuals who are on this call, they all brought different gifts and different skills and different insights that allowed it to really take hold and be beautiful. So from an industry perspective, I would say that just knowing that there are models that do exist and there are precedents that are being set for sustainability, and specifically for stories that matter. And at the individual level, we do have 6 amazing stories of these triumphant women who, overcome obstacles to become advocates in their communities. And what we do believe is one of the core themes around what each of them was able to do, and even to, collaborate with us, is own the story, own a story that maybe they weren't telling before, or maybe they were afraid to tell, but really being able to find their voice, right, within the context of owning that story. And so I feel like everybody has that story within them. Everyone has a story. And so what I would say to the audience at an individual level is, what is the story that you own that you need to tell, or that someone needs to hear, right? And that story is worth telling, and we're looking forward to hearing it. That's what I'd say.
That is an excellent way to end this conversation. So thank you so much for that, JT. Thank you, Chad, B, Monét, and Crystal. You all are incredible and should be amazingly proud of the work that you've produced with Black Girls. Congratulations again on being selected as an official selection for Brand Storytelling 2025. And for those of you who are viewing, run, do not walk to stream this film. You will not be disappointed. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Yep. Thanks, Derek, for a great conversation.